Do you know this kind of person? They walk into any situation, a conversation, a room, a silence, and something activates. Not consciously, not by choice. Their brain just starts reading. The tone, the timing, the thing that wasn't said, the energy that shifted before anyone moved, and while everyone else is just living the moment, this person is already 3 layers underneath it. They never decided to be there. Their brain decided for them. If that sounds like you, stick around. We're diving into some secrets that most people never notice. Here's the thing most people get wrong about over-awareness. They think it's about being smart. It's not. They think it's about being anxious. It's not exactly that either. Here's what researchers found. It's about the way your brain learned to survive. And once you understand that, everything else starts to make a terrifying amount of sense. Let's start at the beginning, because the origin of this is not where people think it is. Most people assume that if you're highly perceptive, you were born that way. Some of you were, but a lot of you? You built this. Brick by brick, without knowing it, without choosing it. Developmental psychologists have a name for it. They call it acquired social vigilance. Here's what that actually means in real life. Imagine you were the kid in a house where the atmosphere shifted without warning. One day, the silence at dinner meant everything was fine. The next day, that exact same silence meant something was deeply wrong. Your brain had a problem. It had to figure out which silence was safe. So it did what all brains do under pressure. It adapted. It started building a detection system, a private weather station that learned to read the pressure of a room before anyone opened their mouth. You didn't become perceptive because you're gifted. You became perceptive because you had to. Think about that. And here's where it gets interesting. That system never got dismantled. You grew up, you moved out, the environment changed. But the weather station, still running, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, monitoring everything. Here's the first thing that nobody talks about. The cost of always being the first to know. People around you think you're perceptive. They say things like, "You're so emotionally intelligent," or "Nothing gets past you." And maybe part of you likes that. But here's what they don't see. They don't see that you go home after a normal Wednesday at work, and you spend 45 minutes mentally replaying a conversation because someone said something that felt slightly off to you, and you can't let it go until you figured out why. A 2019 study from the University of Toronto found that people who score high on what researchers call social monitoring sensitivity show significantly elevated activity in the brain's salience network, the system that decides what deserves attention. But here's the part that explains so much more. In most people, that network quiets down when the social situation ends. In highly aware people, it keeps firing. The meeting is over. But your brain didn't get the memo. It's still there, cross-referencing, filing things, looking for the pattern it might have missed. You know what's strange? The thing that makes you so good at reading rooms is the exact same thing that makes it hard to be in a room. Here's the paradox. You are simultaneously the most present person in any space and the most absent. Half of you is there, nodding, laughing, responding. The other half is somewhere near the ceiling, observing the whole scene from above, cataloging micro-expressions, timing pauses, and running a live commentary that nobody else can hear. It's exhausting, and nobody knows, because from the outside, you look completely fine. But wait, it gets weirder. Here's something that sounds contradictory, but is completely true. A lot of you struggle to name your own emotions in real time. You can read other people's emotional states like an open book, but ask you how you feel right now? Blank. Or worse, you feel something and you immediately question whether you're allowed to feel it. Psychologists call this emotional bracketing. You've gotten so good at holding other people's emotional realities that you've learned to put your own on pause. You don't cry when something hurts. You file it. You think, "I'll deal with that later." And later never comes, because by the time things slow down, there's a new room to read, a new silence to decode, a new fine that doesn't sound fine. Here's where it gets really interesting. Research on what's called reflective sensitivity, your brain's ability to detect signals from inside your own body, shows something remarkable about people who are overly aware. Their internal signal detection isn't just stronger in social situations, it's stronger everywhere. They feel the shift in air pressure before a storm. They feel the change in a room before the door opens. They feel something is wrong in their body before a doctor can confirm it. It sounds like a superpower, and sometimes it is. But here's the part nobody tells you. A system that's calibrated to detect everything cannot also be calibrated to filter nothing. There's no selective mode. When that system is on, it's on for all of it. The real signals and the noise. And learning to tell the difference between those two things, that is the real work. Here's something interesting about the social side of this. People who are overly aware often become what psychologists call relationship thermostats. You're the one who senses when a friendship is cooling down before the other person has even processed it consciously. You're the one who adjusts your energy in a room to bring the temperature back up. You're the one who texts first, who checks in, who smooths things over, and on the surface, people experience you as warm, attentive, deeply caring, which you are. But here's what's actually happening underneath. A significant portion of that attentiveness isn't love. It's management. You're managing the emotional climate of every relationship you're in because an unstable climate feels dangerous to your nervous system. And the moment you stop managing, the moment you let a friendship go a week without contact, your brain starts interpreting that silence as evidence of collapse. And you're back to scanning. And let's be honest about something else. This affects the way you receive love too. When someone is kind to you, genuinely, unconditionally kind, your first instinct is not gratitude. It's suspicion. Not malicious suspicion. Just a quiet, involuntary background check. Why is this person being this nice? What haven't I seen yet? Is this real, or is it something they need from me? Here's the question. When did being loved start feeling like a puzzle to solve? Think about that. Here's something researchers said about this specific pattern. A paper published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology explored what they called hyper-mentalizing, the tendency to over-attribute complex motives to other people's simple behaviors. The findings were striking. People who hyper-mentalize aren't more accurate than others. They're more detailed. They build elaborate internal explanations for why someone looked at their phone mid-conversation or took 30 seconds too long to respond to a message. And those explanations feel true. They feel obvious. But statistically, they're right about as often as anyone else. The difference is, they pay a much higher cognitive price to arrive at the same answer. You know what? There's a specific physical sensation that comes with this. It lives somewhere between your sternum and your throat. It's the feeling of knowing something is wrong before you have a single piece of evidence. Not anxiety exactly. Not dread exactly. More like a pressure, a low hum. Like when you're near electrical equipment you can't see. And the frustrating part? You can't explain it to anyone. Because if you try, it sounds paranoid. It sounds like you're creating problems. But it's there. It's always been there. And more often than not, you were right. Here's the thing about being right a lot. It makes it very hard to learn to let go. Because somewhere in your nervous system, there's a log of every time your gut saved you. Every time you saw it coming. Every time you trusted the hum, and it was correct. So now the system refuses to stand down. Even when it's costing you sleep. Even when it's costing you relationships. Even when the threat is a text message from a friend. The system says, last time we ignored this, it cost us. And that's not irrational. That's deeply historically rational. It just stopped being useful. Here's the paradox at the end of all of this. The most aware people in any room are often the least aware of how extraordinary that actually is. Not because it makes you better than anyone, but because you carry something most people never develop. The ability to feel the full texture of being human. The weight of other people's unspoken words, the shape of silence, the difference between a smile and what's underneath it, that is not a flaw. That is a form of fluency. And once you learn to use it without being used by it, once you learn to observe without becoming the thing you're observing, this awareness becomes something extraordinary. Not a trap, a language. One that most people never learn to speak.